All right. Welcome everyone to Trading Coach's Playbook. Good morning, good afternoon, and maybe even good evening if we've got anybody from way far away. Let's get started, of course, with our disclaimer. Of course, this is all about education and hopefully a little bit of entertainment. So nothing should ever be seen as advice or recommendation. And since it is about education, we want to remember that any trades we talk about are always considered to be non-funded. And also, trading involves risk, so we want to limit that as much as we can. And Freedom Management Partners personnel are not subject to trading restrictions. All right, sorry. Excuse my sniff. I got the sniffles. I think it's allergies. Um, on the calendar, of course, we've got Mastermind Group on Tuesday. Nothing on Monday, as it is President's Day. For all you covered Call Explorer folks, free Theta Burn. So yeah, the market's closed on Monday. Wealth Builders is closed on Monday. So there you go. Start it back up on Tuesday. And then on Wednesday, we'll have the next Monster Market Movers with Rob on the 18th at 8. And then, of course, we'll have our monthly for Inner Circle on the 19th, which is Thursday at 8. So we'll spend a couple hours with Brandon again. And then we'll have our next check in week after next on the 23rd. And right after that, we'll have the next Trading You at 8 o'clock on the 23rd. Um, so for our free stuff, of course, Power Hour is on Mondays, except for weeks like next week where we will move it from the 16th to the 17th. Can't always do that, but we're doing it this week, so that or next week, so that's good. And then, of course, this Trading Coaches Playbook on Fridays. Also, cranking up next week is the Trader's X-Ray, a free class from Tony. First one will be on the 18th, which is Tuesday. And not to be forgotten, what I call our greatest hits, Pop, E-Mini Think Tank, and Cover Call Explorer. All right. And we've got all our cool free stuff on the major social media platforms, in particular, the Trading Post, not to be forgotten. That's a great way to start your morning, right? I hope everyone is also taking advantage of Trade with Rob. That's a really cool program as well. Nothing like free trades, right? Okay. So we'll start this as I start all my classes. Call it Q&A, but really just, if anybody's got a comment or a question that maybe we want to consider, that hopefully it relates to the topic we're going to talk about. But if not, that's what we're here for as educators, is to help you become better traders. So while everyone's fiercely typing all of their questions in, we'll move on to our next phase, which of course is our weekly review. Pull the old Omega charts over here. I did an update about an hour ago, so I don't know how we may go take a look at toss at the 5 minute chart. But for now, in general, wow, pretty big move yesterday, huh? So, and I talked about this last night in my update. Of course, we've seen this little channel that started and then it just didn't quite finish, and then turned kind of into a trend. But then last week we broke this lower low and this lower low. Um, but then we took off. Something else I noticed is we've got one, two, three, four red candles, one, two, three, four red candles, one holiday, two red candles, three red candles, three red candles, three red candles. Isn't that interesting? So you see these patterns, and these are things you want to kind of just notice. And the more you notice them, you see them without really trying. So today, I was not sure what to expect. What I anticipated was probably either a small bounce up or a sideways move, which is kind of what we're getting. I know this morning in the lab, we noticed it was kind of hard to trade. It was real wobbly. So, anyway, what's going to happen? Well, nobody really knows. But one of the things that we want to watch for is these patterns. Let's go over here real quick while I'm thinking about it and take a quick peek at this, which is a 5 minute chart of the SPX, and we can see where, Monday we took a big move up and then just kind of died off and went sideways. And then Tuesday we went sideways, a little bit down. And then Wednesday, big gap up, gave it all back plus more, and then kind of got back and went sideways. And then yesterday we got another smaller gap up and then boom. And when did this happen? Happened about 10:30. Of course, it did start out of the open at 9:45, but about 10:30. So keep that in mind for our discussion later in the day, later today. And then it just kind of went sideways before giving up a bunch right at the end as well. Today, no real gap, but just a bump and a bump and a bump and it's up, but that's pretty bumpy, isn't it? Down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up. So, yeah, probably looking at somewhat of a sideways day. Would anticipate seeing profit taking at the end of the day since we're going into a 3 day holiday. And you see that a lot before 3 day holidays. Something else you see a lot, not every time, no guarantees, but something you see a lot is on that Tuesday, you might see a bullish day where a lot of people are excited and, you see buying. So we'll see if that happens. So, what else? Also, we want to take a look at the old VIX, right? So, we're hanging out right there at 2021. It's my sweet spot. I like it right here, right where it is. I'm hoping it doesn't come back down because, as you've seen, it's gone up and come back down, gone up, come back down. It's hanging a little bit this time. It did that not last time, but time before that. But notice something else. What do we call this? That is what we call a trend, where we are getting higher lows, consistent higher lows since Christmas, all the way up. So even though we'll get a spike up, come back down, we're still keeping those higher lows on a relatively consistent basis. So, sounds like some volatility. Something else, if we go back and look at the SPX, you can see it better. Let's do this. You can see it better on on my daily chart over here because I draw these lines sometimes on Thursdays. So we saw this wedge, and then it kind of became more of a trend. And then if you want to start really at that, well, if it'll give me that, you pull that down since that's kind of the start of it, it becomes just slightly narrowing, but a trend. Well, now you take it down. Oops, that's not what I wanted. Let's do, is that going to work? Yep. You see that, but if we take this big move out, and Tony, I think, showed this the other day. If you come up here and kind of, so you're starting on this move right here, you see that widening. So instead of a wedge, we're actually seeing a megaphone. So that's something you want to watch for. It's actually we want to leave this here, don't we? Because that's the closer low. Um, but when you see that megaphone, that's uncertainty, that's volatility usually. So, and you see VIX is trending up, that's volatility. So, what are we seeing? Maybe we're seeing some concerns. You see these big sell-offs. A lot of that was in tech companies, where what some of the prognosticators are saying is that that could be where people are starting to pick winners and losers in the AI game, and they're selling off the losers. Okay. So yeah, lots going on. Of course, the other thing we talk about in here is earnings, and I don't have my earnings whisperer uh, um, little picture that I usually show in my Monday and Tuesday classes. So I made my own. So we've got Moderna and Advanced Auto Parts coming up on Monday. On Tuesday is SON and Otter. we'll creep back into it, and this is where you'll see the earnings cycle is starting to dissipate. We still see a good number of earnings announcements, but not as many. So we're starting to see the numbers dissipate, but we're still seeing some big names. So you definitely want to take note of it. We've got ET, which is energy. We've got Medtronics, PanW, which is Palo Alto Networks, Toll Brothers, Devon Energy on Tuesday, and Wednesday we've got ADI, Garmin, Kinross Gold. Hey, watch that one. Carvana and Dash. So all you pop traders watch those. And then Thursday we've got Wally World AG, which is a silver ETF. I think it's either I can't remember if it's a company or ETF. We've got John Deere. Afterwards we got Akami or Akami, however you want to say that. We've got Open Door and Rig. And then Friday, we've got AU, which is a gold. I think it's very similar to that AG. So AG is the symbol for silver, and AU is the silver for gold. AU is the symbol for gold on the old chemistry chart. And we got Western Union. So we got plenty to pick from and watch, and also some bigger positions people might be in. So you want to watch that. So, happy Friday the 13th. Bum, bum, bum. And of course, don't forget tomorrow is Valentine's Day. So, I love trading. So, any, uh, uh, um, yes, the 16th is Monday, correct? I'm not sure what that comment was meant for, Brenda. Unless I said something different than that, which could be a possibility. But anyway, let's move into okay. Um, let's move into the topic for today, which is news. News. What is it good for, right? So, what is news? Well, we'll start with our obligatory definitions. Of course, Merriam-Webster, a report of recent events, previously unknown information. I like Cambridge Dictionary, a printed or broadcast report of information about important events in the world, the country, or the local area. Kind of encompasses everything, right? So, why is it important to us? So, we always want to keep an eye out for upcoming events and announcements because they can affect how we trade, the instruments that we trade, the markets in general. So, let's take a look real quick at some news events. What are some things that can cause market movement? Now, obviously, elections, things like that. Federal Reserve announcements, that's one of our faves, right? Uncle Jerry always moves the market, at least until May when he gets replaced by Uncle Warsh. Um, Economic reports, and we'll go deeper into all of these, but things like CPI and jobs, unemployment, employment, etc. Earnings releases, as we just talked about, those can definitely that's definitely something you want to watch out for. You want to make sure that you are not in anything other than a day trade or a scalp if you've got earnings around the corner, and you probably, depending on your level as a trader, how advanced you are, how educated you are, how much experience you have, of whether you want to be in a trade at all the day before, the day of, the day after earnings. And then again, do you know that stock really, really well? And hey, it's likely to maybe not do a whole lot. Or maybe it's likely to make a big spike up and come right back down, or a big drop down and right back up, some things like that. What about political events? You think political events other than elections might move the market? Like the possible government shutdown that might be around the corner, partial government shutdown that might be around the corner. We definitely see that kind of stuff. Um, what about climate? Do we see anything from climate? Do you maybe see Lowe's and Home Depot spike up after a hurricane? So just something else you don't always think about. And of course, something else. Um, and also with the political events, I changed that. It was originally geopolitical events, such as when Russia invades Ukraine or Israel and Gaza get into a fist fight, or the United States and Iran have decided to talk more about uh, uh, nuclear and what Iran is doing with all that. Things like that. Is China doing something? They say they want Taiwan. Do they actually go for it? So there's things all over the world that can do this. So what about some of these economic reports? That's really what we're looking at. Obviously, events can affect what happens in the market in general. But when we're talking about how things actually affect very specific sectors or equities themselves, what kind of reports are we looking at? So, some of the possibilities, and there's a lot of them, but of course, inflation, consumer confidence, that kind of stuff, like CPI came out yesterday. Was that CPI? Or was that Wednesday? Shoot, I can't even remember. Anyway, we'll get to that in a minute. CPI and PCE are always big ones because the Fed watches that as well. What about employment, unemployment? I know that's what came out this week with jobs numbers and unemployment claims. What about gross domestic product? Do you think the amount of GDP that the United States has versus Mexico versus Canada versus China versus Great Britain, do you think any of that's important? From a more wide view of the market, it's definitely going to be important. Trade imbalances, things like that. What about production and manufacturing? Do we care if production is in the manufacturing sector is up or down? Do we care if productivity in the service sector is up or down? We do, depending on what we're trading, right? Housing, new home sales, new home builds, all kinds of things. Energy, are oil inventories important? Does anybody follow Brandon in his E-mini think tank? What about natural gas inventories? What about when there's an energy shortage? What about when shadow fleet tankers start getting taken off of the playing board and you see oil prices start to go up because supply is starting to go down? Then you see other things which maybe make demand go down, like wintertime, usually demand goes down. Summertime, it comes up. Maybe OPEC has a meeting and they decide to cut production or increase production. So it's all supply and demand, right? About retail. Do we care what's going on with Walmart and Target and Macy's and all these other ones, Wayfair, whatever? Definitely. What about bond auctions? This is one that a lot of people don't watch. I do watch it. It doesn't necessarily move the market, but it does give us a precursor into where the overall economy is headed. Probably a good way to look at it. On top of the fact that if anybody's interested in buying a house or refinancing your mortgage, you better be watching the 10-year bonds because that's where the rates come from. Money supply. This is something that I don't watch a lot, but I do kind of just keep it in my peripheral vision because as the money supply increases, the strength of whatever that currency is decreases. Way too many dollars out there, so the value of the dollar falls. And that's another thing a lot of people don't realize is people say that we are printing too much money in the United States, and they're right. But what people don't realize when you hear Xi Jinping talking about making the yuan the reserve currency of the world, it's kind of a joke because when it comes to money printing, the Chinese make us look like amateurs. So Now, if they use a different mechanism, I hear people talking about gold now. That's a different story. And trade surplus deficits, like I talked about a little bit up here with GDP. Is there a huge deficit? Well, we've got a deficit with almost everybody, but it's kind of by demand. It goes back to the beginnings of globalization, which we've talked about before. And it's starting to fall apart. And that's where you're starting to see some of the things like tariffs and other mechanisms to try to bring these trade levels more in line. Will it work? We'll see. History says probably not, but we're also in a new economic environment that we've never been in before. So we'll see. All right. What about all this news we're talking about? Where do you get it? There's lots of different places to get it. I love the ESPN's on here. I don't think that's going to affect us that much, but it could. You never know. Um, but what about some news sources that we can find useful in our domain as traders? How about Forex Factory? That's the one. That's kind of the go-to starting point because it gives you a lot of different information, mostly about economic reports coming up. About earnings whispers. Love that one, especially if you're watching earnings. You can get a lot of information from there. Wall Street Journal, the good old fallback to everybody. Of course, not too many people get it. That you can still get it delivered, a paper version delivered, but not too many people do that anymore. I have a I have a subscription that I renew and then don't renew and don't renew, kind of go back and forth, but I do still pay attention to the website for the free stuff I can get from it, and I do get several email notifications from it. There you go, Stephen. Need something to put in the bird cage. Hallelujah. I love that. That's hilarious. Yeah, Brenda, you're right. It's a lot of it's very different than it used to, and that's when we have to start looking for alternate sources for what we want. And we have to seek out what we want as opposed to just take what is given to us. What about CME Fed Watch? This is one of my favorite websites, especially around Fed announcement time. It's kind of and we'll look at all these in a minute. We've talked about this one before. YouTube. YouTube is probably my favorite. One of the things we talk about in mindset and personal improvement topics is watching less television. I watch a lot of television. Thing is, what I'm watching on my television is probably YouTube. And some of it's entertaining, but a lot of it is more educational, whether it's podcasts or what have you. Um, I have a couple of I've got four four main channels that I watch a lot, just about every single day, including on the weekends on YouTube. One of them is this guy. He does it's got a channel called China Update, and that's where I started watching him. It's a guy, Tony. I forget his last name. His first name's Tony. He's from New Zealand, but he lives in China, and he does a very even keel update about what's really going on over there. Um, and of course, he lives there, so he's got to be a little bit careful. But um, he started a new channel, I guess probably 8 or 9 months ago, called Market Update, where he kind of breaks it down into four categories. He does Asia, the Americas, Europe, and something else like Middle East or Africa or what have you. Uh, um, and he usually does 2 or 3 segments in each of his shows where he hits something very important and very timely. Most of his information is within a day or two. It's extremely timely, so that's great. Um, Something else I watch, of course, I watch Peter Zion on YouTube. His stuff is about a week old on YouTube. If you want it same day, you have to pay for Patreon subscription. That's one I left off of here. Patreon is another one where if you're into, that's where a lot of content providers go, but they have to, you have to pay for most of their stuff. One other guy on YouTube that also has Patreon is a guy named Ryan Macbeth. No, I'm sorry, he's not on Patreon. He's on Substack. But he's ex-military guy, but he's a geek like me. He's very much into cybersecurity, and he helps a lot. He does a lot of misinformation and disinformation uh, um, identification, and so when somebody's maybe not giving you the whole truth, but it's mostly around geopolitical news as opposed to economic news. Market Watch is a great one. That's a great website for economic news. Um, we've got briefing.com, which is another oldie but a goodie. That's a great website to go to. Seeking Alpha. Anybody in here ever check out Seeking Alpha? That's a good place to look. You get a lot of news, a lot of economic news there about the companies, but you also get economic news about what other traders are doing, in particular, big dog traders. Let's see, tradingeconomics.com. This is a really great place to get governmental economic numbers. Because sometimes the .gov sites are really hard to navigate. So this is a little bit easier to navigate. FinViz. Got any FinViz fans out there? I love this one. My favorite thing about FinViz is the heat map. It shows you kind of the market as a whole, and it shows you red for down, green for up. Kind of shows you, and it's grouped into sectors. Um, Benzinga, can't forget Benzinga, right? That's one of Rob's favorites. He does a show. Uh, um, he does a show, or he is a guest of theirs on a regular basis. And then, of course, we got some other ones, some a little bit broader. We're looking at financial web pages like Yahoo, Google, Comet, etc. I really like the Comet page. Rob's the one that turned me onto that one. We've got your trading platform. You can find news on your trading platform. Broadcast news for what it's worth, CNBC, Fox News, Bloomberg. There's some value in some of this, but you have to be careful with any of these, in particular broadcast news, because a lot of people think that their primary focus is to give you news. But what you want to remember is their primary focus is to sell advertising. So tread carefully. Government websites, like I said, sometimes they're hard to navigate, but you can get some good information from them. And company websites, which sometimes also can be difficult to navigate. But if you are really into something, if you have a lot of it or you trade it a lot, and maybe your earnings announcements are showing as unconfirmed for a long time, you can go to the company website and find out what they say. Now, that doesn't mean it's written in stone unless they've confirmed it to be, written in stone. And then another one, ground news. Anybody here ever, does anybody here use ground news? Like I said, we'll look at all these websites. I just want to kind of give everybody a general look at everything. Ground news is awesome. It's a news aggregator. And then of course, don't forget the trading post. Start your day every day, every morning with the trading post, where you can get a glimpse into trading news. So let's take a real quick peek over here, and we'll start, of course, with Forex Factory. And this is this week, and you'll notice that I have everything on mine. I'm a little bit of a glutton when it comes to information. The information overload does not seem to affect me as much as it can others. The great thing about this, though, is it's got this little funnel right here, which is a filter, and you can take out whatever you want to take out. You can take out countries that you don't care about, event types that you don't care about, or impact like Rob usually does orange and red for the US only. And that's why you'll see this for him. Whereas for me, I care more about some of the, especially uh, um, China, Canada, and Japan, little bit of British. Um, and I do the yellow, and I'll show you why in a minute. Because what I found is that on Wednesday, when you do a 10-year bond auction, they classify that as yellow. I disagree, but you know, not too many other people do. So that's why it's yellow, right? And then on Thursday, I think, yeah, we had 30 year, which is also yellow. So I put the yellow in there. I have become much better at blowing through the stuff. What I call blathering, for those of you that have been in any of my classes, you know what that is, which is this right here. Listening to FOMC members drone on and on and on. Some of it can be very important, but for the most part, this is just you know. So really good place to kind of, for me, it's where I start. So that gives me an idea of, hey, you know, Tuesday we had core retail sales. Wednesday we had some employment stuff with unemployment rate. Thursday, we had unemployment claims. Then, of course, also, lo and behold, oil inventories are yellow on Wednesday and natural gas inventories are yellow on Thursday. Well, I disagree with that. I think Brandon would agree. Um, so there you go. And then, today was CPI. So this was our inflation. This is the inflation number that most people look at, but remember that a lot of the Fed governors look at PCE, Papa Charlie Echo, as their inflation number. But really, it's kind of like anything else. Pick one and compare it to, so we've got previous, expectation, and actual. So this is a really nice way, and you can always go back, like here's our year over year. If you open up that folder, it pops down. Look at that. So there's the one, there's January, there's December. So you can look at past ones as well simply by opening up that folder. And then just click the X and it'll close it back down to your normal view. So, what about Earnings Whisper? Of course, one of my favorites. And of course, here's today that Anglo Gold that I mentioned a little bit earlier. Not a lot. We don't usually see a lot on Monday mornings and Fridays just because it's the end of the week. We'll begin to see some on Monday after market, and then Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday is the big days of the week. Excuse me, but this is a great place. You can just put in a ticker and find out their next earnings is April, but it's not confirmed yet. So there you go. And here's, a couple weeks ago we had their news. Now I think you have to have a subscription. Oh, there you go. No, you don't. So it'll tell you kind of what happened with their most recent one. So there's some good information. Something else that I get from them, if I can get this to open up. Oh, I get, and this is an old email, but oops, hello, that's not what I wanted. If we go back to Saturday, I get most anticipated releases for the week. And this is my picture that everybody sees in my Monday and Tuesday classes of kind of what's coming up for the week. Big names. And as you can see, there was a lot of really big names this week. Cisco, Lyft, Ford, Coke, Coinbase, Moderna, Roku, lots of stuff. So anyway, pull that out of the way. Lots of different ways to get at earnings, right? So let's see. I found a new one. If anybody's interested, quarter chart. This is interesting. It's got some earnings stuff. It's got an earnings GPT, but you have to pay for it. You have to pay for a lot of this stuff. I have not started my free trial. They do shorts on YouTube. That is how I kind of found my way into this. But some of their information is a little bit either old or inaccurate, so I'm not sure about this one. FedWatch, one of my faves. So this is for our next announcement coming up in a little over a month. So it's, 90% chance of no cut. Thanks, Captain Obvious. This is all kind of known. What I like to do every once in a while is look at going forward. So even in April, 71% of no cut. June, 50% of a quarter point cut the month after Jerome Powell is replaced as governor. Isn't that interesting? So, and these are this is all odds. So nothing is 100%, but when you see a 95% chance 2 or 3 days before the announcement, unless something dramatic happens, that's probably pretty accurate. So that's something I like to watch a little bit. Here's FinViz that I was talking about. And this is another one of my favorites. I love this heat map. So it kind of shows you what's happening right now in the market. Nvidia's down, Microsoft is up, Wally World is kind of up. We've got technology, consumer, communications, financials, healthcare. It's kind of broken up into sectors and subsectors and showing you what is happening with that individual for the day. Something else you can do. Let's do a search on, let's look at Micron. Hello. Oh, there we go. So this will take you to a page which can help you with any research you want to do. It, of course, is trying to sell you something. And it gives you a chart, a daily chart. I think intraday you have to pay for. Let's click it and see. Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, you have to pay for intraday, but you can get daily, and I think you get weekly and monthly as well for nothing. Um, it's not super responsive. You can create watch lists. You can look at some of this stuff. Here's the a lot of the fundamental numbers behind Micron, if you're interested in that. Some news that might be going on with it. So lots you can find a lot of cool stuff on FinViz. But like I say, the old heat map is my favorite thing. Is this thing gonna? Oh, there we go. Um, okay, here's briefing.com. There's a bond market update. Back from when oh, that's today, I'm sorry. So shows you kind of where the bonds are sitting. Let's see. Let's go to homepage and you can see um just some different things you can get into here. I don't use this a lot. I use it a little bit. It's got some calendars, some earnings calendars. See, there's lots of different places. Oh, but you have to pay, or you have to at least register for that. Some things you'll have to register for, other things you'll have to pay for. Here's trading economics. Here's your GDP growth rate for the United States. Um, you can find lots of different stuff. Where is, let's see, you got a calendar with lots of announcements. There's and it's global. You've got let's look at, oh, there's a heat map looking at some of the big movers. So yeah, you get some good information from there. Oops. Oh, one I forgot, Money and Macro. He's got a YouTube channel. If you're interested in economics, you can learn a lot from this guy. Benzinga, of course. They kind of aggregate a lot of the economic news very well. So that's a good place. They've also got Benzinga TV. They've got shows you can watch for educational purposes, especially if you want to learn from Rob Roy. Let's see. Okay, here we go. Ground news. So this is the one I was talking about. This is a news aggregation service. Um, you can I've signed off of mine because I don't want to skew anybody on this. But the thing that's really cool about it is you've got your daily briefing, you got your top stories, a lot of stuff just like everything else. But when you go, let's go look at the Olympics just 'cause you get some stories about the Olympics. Artificial intelligence. There you go. So you can find some different topics along the way. You've got the For You page, which is once you sign up, it gives you a kind of a feed. But the thing I like the best about it, the two things I like the best about it is it shows you the story. Let's go back. Sorry, it should. Let's look at Anthropic. It shows you where it's been mentioned. It shows you articles about it, how many of them came from left-leaning sources, center sources, and right-leaning sources. If you look at the actual source, it shows you the ownership. You have to pay for this. When you get deeper into this, of course, you have to pay for these features. It shows you who owns that source, what its factuality rating is, and how it leans. Does it lean right? Does it lean left? Does it stay sort of center? And then the other thing is your blind spot. And what this does is if you tend to get a lot of your information from sources that maybe lean right, then maybe you want to look at these because you might be missing something. If you get most of your store stuff from stuff that may lean left, you want to look at this one because this is stuff you could be missing. So it's a great little. I love looking at both sides. I'm probably just a little bit right of center, but I claim no affiliations because I it's the old saying, do you want to be rich or do you want to be right? And I mean correct. I don't care. I want what I think is best, and so I look at the actual policies and the views of whatever's happening politically. So I'm much more of an independent, and so this is very helpful to me because I get to look at both. Now, I will say a lot of my sources probably lean a little bit to the right, but I want to know what's happening on the other side. So I want to look at some of this other stuff that maybe I'm not getting fed by sources that I regularly go to. So, yeah, some cool features. I really like it. I have no affiliation, so do with that as you see fit. Where are we? Where are we? Let's go over here. There's the U.S. Treasury site. That's always a good one. Talking about governmental sites. Let's see. We've got investing.com, which is another one I think I left off the list, but this one can give you a lot of different information. Here's Market Watch. So this used to be one of my main go-tos. I don't follow it as much, but it's got some great information. Here's another calendar. Usually I'm looking at those for their calendars. Um, you got stories about our economic report, inflation, what's actually happening. So yeah, really good. And then another one I mentioned was Seeking Alpha. So this is where you can where is it? Explore investing groups. So there's groups inside. It's a kind of a crossover between news and Reddit and Facebook, or whatever social media. So it's kind of a different way of looking at this site. Where is it? And of course, you can buy premium. Um, but yeah, so a different way of looking at all this stuff. You used to be able to find what people like Buffett were trading, but I didn't find him on here when I looked before. But you can find some of that stuff, and it may be moved over into your investing groups. You got Stock Screener. You got lots of cool tools, just like most of the other places. But you'll have to pay for them. So let's see what else. I think we hit most everything. Um, yeah, we hit most everything except for, of course, the ones I left for last are, where is it? Where is it? There it is. Um, we've got the trading post where you can get all your cool news from wealth builders, gives you kind of a here's what happened overnight, here's what some expectations are going into it, whatever. So there you go. Let's pull that out of the way. And then the other thing I wanted to look at was my favorite um, finance page, which is Perplexity's finance page, which you can find on the comment browser. Again, you're kind of getting a market summary. You got some charts here. You got a heat map. You've got some recent development type stories, some other stories. There you go. So a good place to just go check stuff out. So that's kind of where we are, what we're doing. This is where we can go find different news that we may be looking for. So the next question is why? So who can tell me why it's important to be aware of what's going on in the news? Brenda, I don't think you have to pay for Perplexity. Comet is free, and I don't think you have to pay to get this finance page. I have a paid subscription to Perplexity myself, but I'm pretty sure I had this before that. So it's not necessary to get this, but it is a good AI agent. But anyway, so helps to make better informed trading decisions. Indeed. Who knows what this is? That's when Mr. Trump said he was going to impose tariffs on everybody and the market crashed. So you want to be aware of what's happening because you want to see things like this coming, at least as much as you can, right? Some of it you can't, nobody's got a crystal ball. And if anybody does, you better be sharing it with all of us. But you want to be able to get ahead of as far ahead of as many things like this as you possibly can. That's really what you're after. It definitely makes you a better trader, but as Amelia calls it, you want to be ahead of the curve, and this can help you do that. So that's about all I've got for news and why. And of course, intentionally left some time at the end for some fun slides like one I shared last night, the accountability ladder. I hope everybody is way up here at the top of the accountability ladder. But just make sure you're not waiting and hoping or making excuses or blaming others. Own it, find a solution, make it happen. There you go. And then, of course, real wealth. I don't care what kind of car you drive, house you live in, degree, section in the club, job title. How long can you survive without another paycheck? That's your real wealth. Interesting perspective, I thought. So there you go. And indeed, as Brenda has jumped into the chat, we will now go to the charts. So let's take a look at our Omega charts for your SPY. Used to be spies and Qs, now it's spies and gold, huh? So let's take a bigger picture. Of course, we've got our big run up. Then as we zoom in, we see this same thing. Let's go back out one. There's the channel started and then didn't finish. And then as we zoom in, we've got our big fib, our current fib. We got almost to the point 0.5, so that's really nice. Something that I am almost positive, oh, I had on the SPX was the ABC. So we'll do A, B, C. So that gives us my colors are not right, but that's okay. Um, so as we see, again, something else that let's see, uh, 680 to 689 is 9, and we're looking at 7, so that's 14. So we don't need a fibet there, but sometimes I put them in there anyway because lo and behold, we banged it here, we banged it here. Um, we banged it here. It's recognized. It's just maybe not as recognized. I'm going to take it off just because we don't need any more lines than what we already have. I'm also going to get rid of the ABC. Oops, hello, that's not what I wanted. Okay, I lost my fib. So how about that? Let's do this. Oh, come on. There we go. Pull that out and get rid of that. So deleted the wrong thing. Oh, and I don't have, there's my all-time high pushed up and my all-time close enough. So we're kind of sitting in the middle of nowhere without, let's take this, it didn't take this off, did it? Um, oh, delete line. So yeah, we're kind of sitting down next to that 236. We would certainly like to see a movement. It's not quite a switchback, but it's close. So maybe a move down and a bounce up. Excuse me. If we do get that bounce up, watch your 8 moving average at 687. But that's still, excuse me, that's still a 7 point move. So it's still a pretty good move. Now for the downside, if we get below that 236 at the 680 and bounce and roll over, that's great. One thing you want to be careful of is where you're going to put your stops because we can't really use our 8 because it's way too far up. So make sure that you have a good mechanism slash setup for your stops when you can't use whatever you normally use. I normally use an 8 moving average, but we can't do that here. So you want to do something else. Lots of different ways to do that. So yeah, I certainly anticipate it going sideways and then it'll be closed on Monday. If we see movement as anticipated, it would be a bounce off this level and a move up on Tuesday. So there you go. You got a target right here. You got a target right here. Um, there you go. Let's see. So we got GLD. Let's see. Let's make this a little bigger. So we got this, and lo and behold, I have not. Let's get rid of our ABC. Huh. Isn't that interesting? How about if we go from here? Oops. Come on. Why is my cursor not cooperating? All right. So between here and here, we've got about 16. So we're fine. That's between our ATR and our Fibit. So that's good. We've got 1822, sorry, 1827. So that's probably, do we have, where is, I thought GLD was on there. It's not. Let me do this. There we go. So I can see. So my Wilders is 28. I'm going to leave that 118 and 136. We definitely need it for the 136. Um, but I'm not sure we need it for the 118, but I'm going to leave it because it's definitely recognized. So let's blow this up a little bit. And there we sit right in the middle. So we're sitting on the 8 right in the middle. Not a lot we can do today. Um, Obviously, we had a big move yesterday. Hope you caught that. The F on my chart is Friday. So way back when you could only get expirations on Fridays, um, which I hope everybody knows that now that there are a bunch of equities that have expirations on Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Here, I think I shared this in this group, but it's hard to remember which groups I did and did not share. So there you go. Oh, I think yeah, I shared it in Power Hour, and then Rob and Andrew put it in the chat. Here are the symbols that are doing. iBit was already doing it. So we've got Apple, Amazon, Broadcom, Google, Meta, Microsoft, Nvidia, and Tesla all have options expirations on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. So super awesome. But no, we used to do an expiration Friday strategy. And so I marked all of my Friday candles with an F to note that, hey, that's a Friday. Um, but yeah, for gold, we kind of want to see what it does. If it does anything else today, here, we're a little bit um behind on our charts. So let's go over here to GLD and see if it's doing anything on the daily. Here we go. So yeah, it's it's still right there in the middle. Um, so we'd want to see a move. If it gets up to the 382, gets past the 382, which it's done right here recently. So if we can get over it and bounce and move, that'd be nice. You got your target at your 236 and either your 118 or your zero, depending on what you want to use. That move to the zero is a little big. Um, and then you got to get past the 8 and get past the point 0.5, down, bounce, roll over, get past the 21 as well. But if you probably going to get past it pretty quickly if you're moving down. So your entry would be somewhere around the point 0.5. Your target's at 618 and 786. Oh, you got to be kidding me. I know I changed that. Uh, that ain't right. 764. There we go. Um, so actually, you know what? I didn't save it as default. There we go. Okay. So yeah, so your GLD is kind of in limbo right now. Um, so we'll see what it does. We're coming up on our end of our show today. Take a look at the cues for old time's sake, right, Brenda? Uh, and lo and behold, yeah, that's getting harder to trade. It's a nice scalp, but it's harder to trade. Now we do have this blue zone. Which I don't have written on there. I'll have to go do my engineer stuff and make it perfect a little later. But so we're sitting right on that blue zone. So that would be nice to see a bounce and a move up to the 604, 5 point move. If oops, wrong way. If we bounce up from the point 618, our first target's the point 0.5. Our second target's probably going to be that 8, although that might move up closer to the 382 as we move up. So it could be Either way, if we get past that blue zone and bounce and roll over, we're looking at our 764, and then that's 12. So we don't need, oh, and there's the post. It's 1 o'clock. Um, I want to put the 882 on there just to see. So that could be a target, although it also might not be a target. So that's kind of a iffy. But you definitely got your 764 and your one line for the cues. All right. So that's it. We're going to let Andrew get back to work since he's got better things to do than listen to us, right? But it is 1 o'clock, so I'm glad everybody came out and hope you got some good nuggets, some good information, and we'll see you next time. Trade disciplined out there.